Welcome to the Tuesday NBA slate breakdown. I'm Jason Gilbo. With me is Brent Hyden. Taking a look at tonight's three-game slates. Obviously, some news over the last 30 minutes with Kyrie Irving expected to play tonight. Kind of shifts a little bit in terms of the slate, just basically on the Boston perspective. But as you were telling me, we have to attack somewhere.
Yeah, basically threw a wrench in everything. I was hoping Kyrie would sit out another game, even though I didn't actually expect it to happen. But none of these games are that appealing. But if we're gonna play, we have to get some exposure to something. So hopefully we can find a couple good options and some good value plays to attack here.
Yeah, we'll start with this Brooklyn side here first. Obviously, no D'Angelo Russell tonight. That's going to open up some minutes for guys like Karis LeVert, Spencer Dinwiddie, which I think come in as kind of clear options in that backcourt. In terms of production, like I'm okay with both of them. I actually like LeVert a little bit more tonight.
Yeah, I think Dinwiddie's obviously the chalk option, gonna start play a bunch of minutes. I think the one game D'Angelo set out, he saw a little over 30 minutes, and I mean, he's just been really good when he's been on the court this season. Price is kind of up there though. He's at 4,800 on DraftKings. I think he's 5,800 on FanDuel. A little tough to pay 5,800 for Spencer Dinwiddie on FanDuel. I like him a lot on DraftKings though. The usage is going to be there for him. Obviously, he has the minutes are going to be there for him. Tough matchup, but I kind of think you just have to eat the chalk, especially in cash games with him.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing really appealing about this matchup for any of the backcourt guys. But yeah, I mean, like you said, played over 30 minutes last time out when Russell missed that. I saw a 22% usage rate in that game. Probably going to be right around kind of a 1 point fantasy points per minute guy. But as far as like the other options go, I mean, LeVert's a guy that I'm taking a look at. I don't know how much I'm going to be diving into the backcourt of like Sean Kilpatrick and Isaiah Whitehead tonight. It's kind of more if I have to, or if I see some minutes where they might actually get it, then I'll trust it. But it's kind of hard.
And the thing that worries me with LeVert is that one game where D'Angelo sat out, and I think LeVert played right around 30 minutes as well. Sean Kilpatrick had just come back from the birth of a child, and I think he only saw like 2 or 3 minutes. They have Whitehead back there as well. I'm worried that those guys could eat into those minutes for Karis LeVert. So he's worth a flyer in GPPs. 25% usage rate with Russell off the floor. I think I'm going to lean more towards some of the guys in the like in the backcourt though, if we're looking to attack anyone else from Brooklyn other than Dinwiddie.
DeMar Carroll is another standout for me. He's averaged 1.34 fantasy points per minute with Russell off the court this season, right around a 25% usage rate. He's probably the guy that I'm the most interested in at a small forward position, especially on FanDuel. Like I said, you have the roster too. It's kind of tough. There's no real easygoing options at small forward on FanDuel tonight. So I think he's a guy that I'm going to be plugging in quite a bit. Obviously not the greatest matchup, but Boston's been kind of right around average against small forwards this year.
And he's a guy who's got, pretty secure minutes. He's going to come out and play close to 30, 32 minutes. They're going to need his length and his defense on some of these wings for Boston. So I definitely think he's a great option. Sees about a 6% usage increase without Russell on the floor. Something to consider here, and I have a feeling this is going to be a popular opinion across the industry today, is that with Kyrie back, this game is going to blow out pretty easily. And I think people need to at least do a little research and realize that with D'Angelo Russell off the floor and Spencer Dinwiddie on the floor, the team is better both offensively and defensively. So some of that has to do with who those guys are going up against, whether it be starters or reserves. But the numbers point to them being actually better with Dinwiddie on the floor. So you can get some exposure here. I think your safest guys are Dinwiddie and Carroll, and maybe Rondé Hollis-Jefferson.
Yeah, I was gonna ask. I mean, like both him and Trevor Booker back. Booker's obviously a guy who can come off the bench and put up some reasonable fantasy points. Rondale Jefferson's a little expensive. Obviously he's been playing pretty well. Like he's 7,500 on FanDuel, 64 on DK. I'm definitely gonna be looking at him tonight, but I'm definitely not gonna be plugging a ton of him in.
Yeah, I don't know that I'll have a ton of them either. You mentioned Trevor Booker; he's an interesting option. I don't know. I'm hoping that back isn't bothering anymore. He hasn't really flashed the Trevor Booker double upside recently. So a little concerned there, but worth a flyer in GPPs where he's cheap.
Any interest in anyone else like Alan Crabb or anyone like that?
I just can't trust any of these wing guys that get 20 minutes one game, 30 minutes another, and then 8 minutes the next game. And just I don't want to go there.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. On the Boston side of things, obviously with Irving back, I kind of had everything prepared as if he was sitting, and then now we're kind of shifted in. But obviously, all these guys are in good spots. I mean, it's a matchup against Brooklyn. Um, I mean, how do you take Irving coming back in this first game?
I think it's site dependent. If you're looking on DraftKings where you don't actually have to plug in 2 point guards, I think you can probably fade him. Obviously, it is an excellent matchup. I do have a little concern about how he's going to play coming back. Wearing that mask, that is like a little bit of an adjustment period for some of these guys. But on FanDuel, point guard is ugly. Point guard is just really, really, really bad. I mean, your options are Irving and Lowry up top, and then like Dennis Smith and a couple of his other guys. So I think he's excellent on FanDuel. I think on DraftKings, I'm probably looking elsewhere.
Does that kind of kill the buzz of like Marcus Smart for you, or you still think he's a viable play?
Not really. I think they're both him and Rozier, even though they're priced up, are decent options. They're still going to see a decent amount of minutes. I mean, Marcus Smart's still seeing around 30 minutes, even when Kyrie plays. The same thing goes for Rozier. I mean, he's about 25, 26 minutes when Kyrie plays. So, I mean, you can definitely go there with both those guys. They both have upside against a bad Brooklyn team. I don't mind looking either one of those directions and maybe fading the Kyrie chalk.
Yeah, I mean, both are, just under a shade under, one fantasy points for Ant this year. Rozier's been an excellent rebounder too. It's something that's kind of surprising me. Obviously, he crashes the boards, and that's one thing I've been really impressed with him on. So against a Brooklyn team that doesn't really rebound all that much, um, and he's kind of the guy. If it does blow out, he might actually see some extra run as well.
Yeah, for sure. Him and Smart will both kind of see a few extra minutes against with some second unit, some of these second unit players of Boston. So I think both those options are viable.
As far as the front court goes, I mean, you have Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Al Horford. Um, Marcus Morris is obviously back. He's sneaking in some minutes too. I think he's actually kind of a sneaky punt option on this slate.
I think so as well. He matches up really well with the lineups that Brooklyn's going to throw out there. I definitely don't hate that option, especially in cash games. I think he can easily hit value. I mean, he should be seeing upwards of around 25, 26 minutes now. Like they wanted to increase his minutes limit. Obviously didn't happen against Toronto, but I do have some concern because I guess he was experiencing some knee soreness during that Toronto game, which is a little concerning. So if news comes out that maybe he's not going to play increased minutes, I might fade. I think Al Horford is my favorite option here, going against a Brooklyn team that struggles to rebound, they struggle to defend in the paint. Even with Kyrie being back, like I loved Horford if Kyrie is going to be out because he sees a massive usage increase, but even with Kyrie being back, I think this is an excellent spot for Horford. I think he has a ton of upside in this matchup.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the center position tonight, like there's only a handful of options, especially on FanDuel. I'm with you. Horford's my favorite as well, just because I don't feel like he's entirely all that high priced. And he's just playing, insanely well. The production's there kind of across the board. As far as the other guys, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, I'm not going to rule them out tonight. Both are fairly cheap in that mid range, good spot. Tatum's interesting. If you say that, Morris is obviously a guy we need to keep an eye on. I kind of like Tatum at his decreased price tags.
Yeah, he's fine. I think he's an extra. Like I couldn't say no to anyone from the Boston side of this game. Brown is definitely interesting because he can notch up. He's a decent rebounder as well against a Brooklyn team that can't really rebound. He has the defensive ability to notch some steals and things like that. So I think he has a little bit of upside in this matchup too.
Yep. Toronto, Houston next year, 219 total, far the highest total on the night. Houston obviously at home, still no Chris Paul. James Harden's at super high price tags. I mean, he's over 12K on both sites. And I mean, he's playing well, but I just have a hard time paying over 12K for people.
Yeah, he's another one of those site-specific options. I think if you're looking on FanDuel, it's pretty easy to get him in and get some of these other top options on the slate. DraftKings, it's a little tougher. I think if you're playing cash games, you have to play James Harden. He has obviously the highest ceiling of any player on the slate, probably the highest floor of any player on the slate, which you expect at that price. In GPPs, I think you can easily fade James Harden and do more of a balanced roster build and still get some exposure to Houston. But you, I don't think people need us to tell them that James Harden is an excellent play.
No, I don't think so either. And I mean, as far as like the secondary options go, I actually don't have a ton of interest. It's weird. Like I don't. If this was a bigger slate, I probably wouldn't be looking at Houston as much. Like I'm still cool with Eric Gordon and Trevor Ariza for minutes. Is Ariza probably more so on FanDuel, where he's going to play 35 plus minutes as he usually does. So like I'm okay with him. Clint Capella is the one guy that I'm kind of interested in tournaments.
I actually have a lot of interest in the peripheral guys here. You mentioned Eric Gordon. I think obviously you have to look at the usage for this team. He has second highest usage on the squad after James Harden. He's just been outstanding. He matches up with Toronto pretty well. If you're gonna fade James Harden, I think you can definitely look at Eric Gordon and get exposure to a guy that's gonna should put up a decent game. Minutes are there for him. Ariza playing a ton of minutes too. I definitely like him. Capella, the Raptors are a decent rebounding team, but they are giving up a decent amount of points in the paint and second chance points. So it's definitely an opportunity for Capella to put up a big game. PJ Tucker is interesting too. Obviously, with Nene ruled out, that might mean a few extra minutes for Tucker and Luke Richard. I kind of like Tucker in the spot. He's really, really cheap going up against his former team. Obviously, you have the revenge narrative there, but he's an excellent rebounder, and he can boost his floor tonight by fighting some of these guys like Serge Ibaka and whatnot for rebounds.
The good thing about Houston is their minutes are pretty solidified. There's about six guys that what their minutes are going to be outside of the occasional Capella game where he doesn't see as many minutes. But I mean, I don't mind all these guys here. Ryan Anderson's the only one that we wouldn't talk about because he's at home with those lights.
There we go. I think some interesting to note, just to kind of boost the value of Ariza and Tucker. Obviously, it's a fairly small sample size, but the Raptors are getting crushed this season on guys that are shooting the corner three. They're allowing 43.7% on corner three attempts, about like 5 or 6 per game. Ariza and Tucker are the two guys that lead the team in corner three attempts. Are actually ranked in the 90th percentile in the entire NBA. So a few extra points coming off those corner threes could really boost their value.
Anyone else you want to look at there?
Not really. I don't think there's really anyone else of interest from that side of the ball.
On Toronto, obviously the backcourt, DeMar DeRozan, Kyle Lowry. Lowry is interesting tonight. He's still not all that appealing to me in terms of a fantasy production standpoint because he really hasn't been that great this year. DeRozan's kind of the guy that I'm mainly looking at here.
Yeah, it's a really, really disgusting thought to think that DeRozan might be one of the top plays on the on the slate on any given night. Obviously, we have the Norman Powell news that he's not going to play tonight, or he's doubtful. I wouldn't expect him to play. If you pull up the usage over the last couple seasons, specifically this season without Norman Powell on the floor, DeMar DeRozan has a 41% usage rate. If you're telling me that I'm going to get DeMar DeRozan, who's use with the 41% usage rate and what's supposed to be the highest scoring game of the night at like 8K, give me all the DeMar DeRozan tonight. I know he's not going to put up rebounds and assists or a bunch of peripheral numbers, but the dude has 24 points in 10 of his games this season against a Rockets team that kind of likes to get out in transition and run. Like, this is a spot where DeRozan can actually put up a huge game, and he could possibly be the highest scoring player on tonight's slate.
When you look at things, it's funny because you said, fading Harden for Gordon, that type of, if you're staying within the Rockets. I kind of like DeRozan as that guy. Basically, if I'm not using Harden, I kind of have to use DeRozan because that's a shooting guard spot. I mean, there's really two guys that can probably score 40 plus, maybe three with Gordon in there, and that's kind of it.
Yeah, pretty much. So, like, if you are fading Harden, you kind of have to go with the guy like DeMar DeRozan, and that really sucks to say.
But I mean, he can give you that extra bump. Like he can give you that extra 4K to use somewhere else. Like he's going to give you another elite tier somewhere else in comparison to where Harden maybe sucks you away from digging into further value.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I know he has upside. I mean, against the Pelicans, 2 games back, we saw him hit like 50 fantasy points. He has a few other high 40-point games and a couple like right around 41. I think on slates like this, people have to adjust their thinking when it comes to reaching value. If he's going to get me 40 fantasy points, maybe 45 at 8K, like I'll take that all day on a slate like this.
Yep. As far as Kyle Lowry goes, are you any interest in tonight? Like I just kind of feel if he's going to get me 30, like I'm going to go down to Patty Mills. I'm going to go down to Dinwiddie. I'm going to go down to Dennis Smith.
Yeah, I think if you're building a bunch of GPP lineups, you want to have some exposure. But other than that, I'm not real interested in him tonight.
Interest in some of the front court guys, CJ Miles, Serge Ibaka.
I want to wait and see who's going to get the start for Norman Powell. If CJ Miles starts, I do have a lot of interest in him just because he's cheap and he's a perimeter threat. OG and Anunoby actually got the start in the second half of their last game whenever Norman Powell went down at 3K. I think he's an interesting option as well. He's been playing really well for this team, so you could look at him, but that's about it.
Yep. Valanciunas at all?
Not really. The Rockets are one of the best rebounding teams in the NBA. You could take a flyer in GPPs, but I think you're better off going with Horford or someone like that at center.
Yeah, it's insanely hard to trust him and his minutes overall. I mean, 19, 27, 24, 19, 21 over his last five. I'd rather spend up a little bit if I'm going anyone cheaper than Horford's going to be Gasol.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I'm leaning as well.
So, last game at night, San Antonio, Dallas. You and I kind of looking at this game a little bit more than probably we would on maybe a fuller slate, but there's actually some decent options in this one.
I think there's a lot of decent options in this game on both sides of the ball, and I think it's going to go overlooked, especially the Dallas side. I think people are going to kind of overlook a few of these options on the Dallas side.
Yeah, we'll start with San Antonio. Obviously, it's the away team. Backcourt, it's been Patty Mills, it's been Dejounte Murray. We've seen Mills kind of come alive, more over the last 10 days or so. Still really cheap. Like if you need a point guard, I don't mind going that route.
Mills is actually one of my favorite plays on tonight's slate. If you kind of look at the Mavs, obviously they struggle to defend point guards this season, but they really struggle to defend the ball handler in the pick and roll, and they struggle to defend on spot up attempts, and that's a lot of how Mills scores. He averages 1.41 points per possession on spot ups about 21% of the time, and he's the pick and roll ball handler about 46% of the time. So this is an excellent spot. I think Mills actually comes out and puts up a really solid game, and at that price tag, especially on DraftKings at 4,200, on FanDuel he's 45. Like I don't see a way where he doesn't come out and at least get you cash game value.
Yeah. I mean, you look at kind of all these Spurs backcourt guys. Danny Green's super cheap. He's only 46 on DraftKings. I hate rostering Danny Green, but if he's healthy and good to go tonight, I'll entertain it.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I mentioned the Mavericks struggling to defend spot up shooters. Well, guess what Danny Green is? That's pretty much all he does anymore. I mean, what is it? 41% of the time he spots up and he's averaging 1.14 points per spot up possession. So it's an excellent spot for him to come out and kind of shoot the lights out.
Yeah, I definitely looking at him. As far as small forward options, it's basically been split between Anderson and Rudy Gay. Any interest in either of those guys?
Kind of like Anderson a little bit, just because he's fairly cheap. Does have a pretty solid role in this offense. I think you can look at him.
Yep. Then obviously both the front court guys are very much in play. LaMarcus Aldridge, Pau Gasol. Gasol's coming off a phenomenal game. You're not going to get the ownership that you did last game on him. He's probably going to be one of the more popular plays. Still not playing heavy minutes, but I mean, he's been a terrific fantasy points per minute guy. And, once again, I expect him to kind of flirt with 30 fantasy points as a floor.
Yeah, I'm actually looking to get both these guys in my lineup. Starting with the Gasol, we know the Mavericks struggle to rebound; they struggle to defend the rim, and Gasol is an excellent rebounder, and he scores really well in the paint. So I think you can look at him in cash games and in GPPs. He probably doesn't have a ton of upside at that price, especially on DraftKings where he's up to 6,500. But he's still obviously we know he can get you 40, 50 fantasy points at times. So I really like him, and I think LaMarcus Aldridge is just an absolute lock for me across the industry and in both formats too. The usage just really, really high in this offense without Kawhi. Offense just rolls through him. It's a really good spot for him. I don't think there's anyone really that can defend against him.
Yeah, no, I'm in agreement. I'll be looking that way. Both of them are shooting over 40% from three this year.
Yeah, it's insane. Like LaMarcus Aldridge, like his game is. I love his game. Like people knock on him, but man, he's so much better whenever he's the focal point of an offense.
Yeah, and look, obviously Dallas. 26 and a point 3-point percentage. We should be seeing some threes from the Spurs tonight.
Oh yeah, if Powell's gonna step out and shoot like 4 3-pointers tonight, and he's probably gonna knock down all of them, I'm gonna be loving it.
On the Dallas side of things, we'll start with Dennis Smith Jr. here. Kind of underpriced. I mean, obviously, San Antonio's still been, good against point guards, but Smith, his usage rate's still high. Minutes have been pretty solid. I mean, he's been over 30 in each of the last three, playing well. I like him a lot on this slate, even though it's a tough matchup.
It really is a tough matchup, but we've seen him actually put up solid numbers in tough matchups. I mean, look at the back-to-back games against Memphis. He put up 28 and 30 fantasy points. We know he has the ability to do it. He's hot right now. He has two of his last 3 games are over 45 fantasy points. The minutes are going to be there for him. They're trending upward. You mentioned the usage rate are right around, I believe, 27%. It is a tough matchup, but this is a spot where I think you can actually get Dennis Smith Jr. at lower ownership because people are going to be scared, and he could probably win you a GPP if he has a great game.
Yeah, and as far as the other guys, I mean, I kind of am playing them more for the minutes. Wesley Matthews, Harrison Barnes, both guys that you expect to play 35 minutes tonight. Not great fantasy points for him to play. I mean, Harrison's been fine. Wesley Matthews has been a little bit more limited, but I like him. I mean, Matthews is cheap, Barnes is fairly cheap, and once again, I'll go back to saying FanDuel where you have to roster 2 small forwards. I think Barnes is kind of a play that you can look at.
Yeah, I think Matthews is my favorite option. I actually wrote him up in the GPP article for today. The Spurs, one of the areas where you can attack them is guys that spot up on the corner threes. Wesley Matthews does that a lot. I mean, just look at his game against OKC. He shot 0 of 5 from 3 and 0 of 9 from the field. Still put up like 13 fantasy points. This is a spot where, like, I mean, if he's not gonna shoot, he's not gonna miss every shot he takes again. Like, it's just not going to happen. He shoots better at home. He's 4,700. Like, people aren't going to look at Wesley Matthews. He's a guy that's playing a ton of minutes. I mean, it's 41 minutes against Cleveland, 37 against Washington. He's averaging like 35 over his last 5 games. I mean, I'm going to take that at 4,700 on a slate like this.
Yeah, I am too. I mean, you eat those minutes, like I'm more than okay with it. What I'm not okay with is basically the front court of Dallas.
You mean you don't want some Dirk Nowitzki here?
No, I'll take his 18 minutes and I'll head on out of town.
Yeah, I think he can maybe take a flyer on Solid Measury. He's never going to play a bunch of minutes. I mean, we saw him play like 25 against Washington. That's kind of an outlier here. He's probably going to play closer to like 15, 16. You could probably go there if you need like a 3K punt option. You'll probably walk away. The odds of you walking away with like 12 fantasy points are higher than you walking away with like 20 to 25. But if you get him and you have him in a couple of GPP lineups and he does put up a decent game, then you're going to be happy.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you can get those blocks. I mean, obviously we've seen a couple of big block games out of him in that span. Obviously the Washington and the New Orleans game, but yeah, I mean, I'll take a flyer on him because we haven't really named a tremendous amount of centers. It really is Gasol, Capella, Horford up top. There's no cheap guy.
Yeah, there really isn't it. Like Aaron Baines, and that's about it.
Yeah, and yeah, that's it. That's it for us. I mean, record time here of 20 minutes. So, changing it up tonight. Who do you got as your best points per dollar play?
Ooh, that one is tough. Best point per dollar play. I'm gonna go OG Anunoby.
Oh, 3K. Nice. um, I'm gonna go Danny Green. I hate the guy, but Danny Green.
There you go.
So that's it for us. You can head over to dayfantasycafe.com, check out our great tools and content, and we'll see you tomorrow.
See you guys.